Neil from Messick's here to do our quarterly equipment industry State of the Union address. If you are shopping for a piece of equipment, you have machinery needs coming up here in the future, hopefully this video kind of sets the stage a little bit for what you can expect to find when you step into a dealership to buy a new piece of machinery.
Messick's, a helping hand with your land.
We're going to work through each of our customer segments and address each of them in terms of equipment availability and equipment demand. If we start here with consumer products, if you paid attention to any news recently, you're probably aware that economically, there's some concerns out there for consumer products, and we are starting to see that. Demand for some of our consumer products, things like lawn tractors and zero-turn mowers, are starting to soften a little bit. Now, on the flip side of that is the supply side, the equipment side, and that remains very, very sparse. We have a lot of big talking manufacturers when it comes to availability come springtime. But anymore, I don't believe these people until I start to see things hit our loading dock. And at this point, the availability for things like zero-turn mowers, lawn tractors, those consumer-oriented products remains very, very thin. It's really hard for these companies to get all of the required components, specifically engines, in order to be able to build this equipment. So there's just not a whole lot of selection out there at this moment. So both of those things, in terms of both demand and availability, have softened a little bit, and that should lead to some rapid normalization of this part of the industry in the next couple of months. If you do a couple Google searches for demand for compact tractors, you're probably going to find some industry headlines out there that show some double-digit declines in the sales of compact tractors compared to last year. We would echo that. We've seen a little bit of softening in those numbers. However, you need to have some context to those numbers. The industry has been on an absolute tear for the last 2.5 years or so, and we're expecting some normalization of those numbers. So sales are certainly going to decline off of these ridiculous highs that they've been on, but we're seeing projections that are going to put sales kind of back at the 2019 pre-pandemic levels, which at the time we would have all been very happy with. So we are expecting some of those things to soften, again, largely driven by economic instability right now. A little bit of uncertainty in how things are going to go causes people to be a little bit more cautious when it comes to making high dollar purchases for themselves at home. So we are starting to see inventory on these kinds of tractors creep back up again. We probably have more compacts on our lots right now than what we have had in the last 2 years or so, but we are definitely still seeing availability issues for attachments. Attachments, particularly loaders and backhoes, remain really hard to come by. So while you're going to start to see a lot more tractors sitting around in our lots, in many cases it is taking us some weeks and months in order to get machines delivered to customers, because it's still taking us a long time to get attachments and accessory kits and everything together for those machines. So still smart to think ahead a little bit. If you're planning a purchase for springtime even, I get in and talk to a salesperson to kind of get yourself in the computer system, because it could take some time to get that entire package complete. Now, as we move out of small tractors and start ratcheting up into bigger ones, the bigger the machinery is, the harder it is to come by, and the demand for that machinery remains extremely strong. A lot of our farmers have had kind of interesting years this year. We had some pretty significant drought conditions around here, but there are a lot of people that have had surprisingly good years, and as we approach year end here, the demand to be able to spend some of that money off for tax purposes is certainly going to be there. Now, we've got good availability in things like, hay tools and some attachments. There's opportunities out there to make a quick purchase to kind of right size your income for the year for tax purposes. But when you get into things like utility tractors and combines and harvesters, the lead times for those continue to be fairly significant. Definitely a case where planning ahead is super, super important. If you need a piece of equipment and you're looking for springtime, or even planning for this year's year end, talking to a salesperson is really, really important right now. Every one of these products can be a little bit different from one to the other. There's places where you'll probably find some big tractors around here, but places that you're not going to. And so having some of those verbal conversations is really important, because there's good and bad pockets out there, and I can't sit and list out every one of those for you here to tell you all of the information. So if you're in that year-end buying type category, or you're a larger producer running larger equipment, there has never been a more important time to get in and get engaged with somebody here at Messick's. If you look around our lots, you're going to start to see more hay tools than what you've seen in a while, particularly from the domestic brands. We're seeing a lot more things like rakes and tedders start to come back into inventory again, which should put us in a pretty good position to meet in-season demands here for this year. We're still a little short on some things like round balers, right? That equipment where you've got potentially thousands of parts in that machine are still a little bit slow coming into our yards, but hay tools as a whole are starting to recover and look a lot better. Whether you're a contractor or a farmer or a landscaper or an acreage owner, many people run skid steers and compact track loaders, and that continues to lead to demand that is outstripping our supply. We do see a little bit of a bump here recently in the pace of some of these things coming in because of some changes in shipping logistics that are getting a little bit more of that equipment here on shore, but not in ways that's going to start to shorten our lead times here, unfortunately. The best that we can offer here at Messick's is, again, get in, talk to a salesperson, get in line for that equipment. There are configurations of these, say the really deluxe, say cab hydraulic coupler high flow options, the ones that are the most in-demand configurations that have still some significantly long lead times. But if you're able to look and say take an open station machine or something with a mechanical coupler, we might have a little bit more luck at finding you something a little bit more quickly. So call and have a conversation. But if you're looking at something for spring, or you're a dairy farmer with a skid steer that's starting to wear out, you need to be able to feed your cows. Like, these are concerning things to us. You got to think ahead here a little bit and plan that replacement cycle out months or a year in advance. Beside me here are two compact wheel loaders that, as far as I'm aware, are in stock and available right now. We are stocking more and more of these compact wheel loaders as a skid steer alternative, essentially, partly because of the lead times that we have for skid steers right now. These have become an alternative machine that could do much the same kind of work. These are really cool. I've done a lot of videos on them in the past. If you look here regionally around the world, skid steers are something that's really only run in the US, and most of the rest of the world relies on a machine like this for skid steer style work. And so if you have, say, a space that's big enough to accommodate a little longer wheelbase of a compact wheel loader, it's worth looking at as a skid steer alternative, especially if you're looking for snow removal needs this winter. In the last 3 months, we have had a rapid restock in attachments. Now, think specifically the kinds of attachments that are mostly welded, things like buckets and grapples, box blades, rear blades, that kind of stuff that have been really thin for a long time. We're starting to see rapid levels of that stuff coming back into stock again. Now, that's not to say that we have anything or there's not pain points in there. Now, remember, when I say attachments, loaders and backhoes are still a real problem for us, but things like buckets, grapples, rotary cutters, salt spreaders, box blades, rototillers, snow blowers, front blades. Looking around the yard over here, there's a lot of this stuff accumulating again. Now, these big piles of attachments here, let's keep in mind, a lot of tractors go out of this place, so there's not months and months of supply here, but definitely more variety sitting on our lots now than what we've seen in a long time. And one thing I got to prepare you for when it comes to attachments is how some of these prices have changed in the last 2 years. With a lot of the other equipment that we've covered here, prices have gone up, but they haven't gone up in shocking ways. Some of these attachments, though, are significantly more money than what they may have been 2 years ago, and even shocking to us sometimes. When you look at the economy and the different places where we've seen prices rise, certain attachments like this Batwing are kind of hit in every conceivable area, right? Steel prices are still high. They've come down a little bit, but they're still elevated. You're gonna have imported parts in terms of your hoses and cylinders, that kind of stuff. Those things have gotten more expensive. Complex gearboxes and all of their castings and seals still have some availability issues. When you're trucking this stuff around, only a couple of them fit on a truck, and trucking is incredibly expensive anymore. All of these things have led the pricing of some of these implements to be surprisingly high, to the point that even we get a little bit of sticker shock looking at what we're paying for them sometimes now too. So starting to see some on the lot, the availability is coming back, but come in with an open mind, and again, plan those purchases ahead so that you kind of know what you're getting into when you're looking for something like a Batwing. Used equipment continues to be a challenge and a place that you want to watch out if you're a used equipment buyer. We have shared a few times now that we see some used equipment pricing out there with jockeys and some auction values for some of this machinery going way beyond what it should sell at. We have a little bit of a conscience here when it comes to listing a piece of used equipment for more money than what a new one is going to sell for. That is happening out there in the market today, and it is still happening right now. We are starting to see that baseline level of used equipment start to rise here a little bit as we're making more deliveries of new machinery. The used equipment inventory is starting to creep up a little bit. It still remains at a very low level. However, there is more of it out there today than what there has been in the past. You're going to want to watch. The one thing that we really see happen is the desirable pieces tend to sell in hours, literally hours. People are still on the hunt for certain pieces of equipment. The best way to be on the know on that stuff is to go to the Messick's website, go under used equipment, and there at the top of the equipment listings, there's a button where you can plug in your email address to get a daily email of the new pieces of used equipment that are arriving here on our lots. That is a great resource to be able to go through and know what's coming in and catch that special piece that you might be looking for. So in summary, we're expecting a softening of consumer demand. However, our ag and construction customers and people shopping for that compact equipment are really still out there in droves. Those markets appear to remain healthy, and while we're expecting some things to back off a little bit, probably returning to more pre-pandemic levels than we are some kind of collapse of the market, right? Too many people sit out there and they watch the news that's put out all too often, the news that's meant to get you whipped up and worried and whatever, so you come back and watch the next episode. It's not happening out here. The bottom is not falling out and things continue to chug along. We're going to hope that they stay that way because it's good for all of us if they do, right? If we're shopping for a piece of equipment, now is the time to get in touch with a salesperson in here. Let us help you pre-plan that purchase if we can, or we're available if you have any parts or service needs for your machinery. It's what we do better than just about anybody that you'll find. We're available at 800-222-3373 or online at Messicks.com. I was rushed. Okay. In the last 3 months, we've. Okay. Just wait. There's a service truck coming behind you.